What's up, Patreon family? This is your girl Megan, and today I would like to do an astrological deep dive on the psychopathic nature of dark-sided Aquarius. So, this was something that I thought would be really fitting for Aquarius season, right? With transiting Sun and Saturn in Aquarius, not to mention us living in the age of Aquarius. It really has a lot of people showing the darkest parts of themselves and putting it on display for the world to see. And in many instances, in some of the most shocking and horrific ways known to man, which is very fitting with dark-sided Aquarius. I do want to preface this video by stating that oftentimes in astrology, people overly rely on Aquarius's philanthropic and humanitarian like nature. And this is because at its core, when in alignment, Aquarius is tolerable. Aquarius is equitable. Aquarius is all about advancing for the greater good. In some of the best instances, Aquarius could be friendly. It could be all about community and community building. But on an individual level, Aquarius oftentimes lacks that human-like connection or attachment that would typically drive other signs. Okay? Now, this is not to be confused or to imply that Aquarius or, moreover, people with prominent Aquarian energy or placements are just completely incapable of interpersonal relationships and close human interaction. Not the case at all, because there could be a lot of other things on an individual level that could impact the way this is expressed. But as a rule of thumb, it's still very important to understand that Aquarius is not necessarily designed for interpersonal one-on-one connection, especially when it comes to things that are in and of the heart. Okay? The opposing sign to Aquarius is Leo. Leo actually does rule the heart. And with Aquarius being its polar opposite, although they still share some commonalities, a very distinct contrast is the absence of that human-like quality that allows one to really connect with more heartfelt, emotionally charged sentiments, love, and things that can make a person feel like they have passion, purpose, joy, oftentimes are harder to access. Once again, am I implying that Aquarians can't have joy or have fun or experience wonderful things in life? Of course not. But it's also important to note that when dark-sided, especially if we're talking about people on an individualized level, these can be some of the most cold-hearted, ruthless, detached, and insidious people the world has ever seen. And the depth of Aquarius's dark-sided nature lies within its ability to completely objectify and dehumanize. Historically, anytime these two things have been done, especially when we're talking about geared towards groups of people, nothing good has ever come from it. Let's be honest. When you remove the ability to feel or to think of other humans, especially as human beings, you kind of introduce this robotic state of operation to where literally anything could be possible. These people are capable of anything. And if you ask me, it's actually worse than the dark-sided Scorpio. Now, Scorpio is one of those signs that is obviously very much notorious for its darker side, as it can invoke lots of demonic activity. Scorpio in of itself does deal with things in life that scare the shit out of us, like death, underhanded activity, crime, right? Murder, rape, power struggles, people asserting dominance over you. And on a individualized and personalized level, people who exude a lot of dark-sided Scorpio energy can be capable of all of the aforementioned. But because Scorpio is very much a water sign, it still runs off of emotion. The desire to feel is always going to be there. In fact, Scorpio feels too deeply. Now, this is why you have people with prominent Scorpio placements who may be darker natured, who are very much capable of committing things like crimes of passion, or who get a thrill and find excitement from engaging in, once again, whether it be underhanded activity, criminal activity, where they can be up close and personal with a lot of those darker sides of life, but it's still fueled by feeling, by passion, by emotion. Aquarius, which is actually one of the signs, the main sign that's known for its perversion, and outside of its obvious, more sexual implication, when we talk about the word perversion, right? One of the definitions is sexual behavior or desire that is considered abnormal or unacceptable, which is still very much true. Different video for a different day. The other definition of perversion is what I want to hone in on, which, according to the definitions from Oxford Languages, the alteration of something from its original course, meaning, or state to a distortion or corruption of what was first intended. It speaks to an abnormality or a defect, ways of thinking, being, and expression that is not normal. And when you put this within the context or the scope of evil and just how evil these people can be, it can introduce you to a whole new level of low. Shocking, even. And Aquarius is a sign that deals with surprises, things that shock you, things that jolt you, things that make you go, huh? Really? So out of the ordinary, so much out of the scope of what people are used to. Even with all things good and bad considered, it still takes the cake, so to speak. And this is why Aquarius can gain lots of attention and notoriety, hence that polarity to its Leo sister sign, from doing some of the most egregious things. Think about the culture that we currently exist in today, where thanks to the internet, which is also very much governed by Aquarius, we now have front row seats to some of the most horrific and just crazy, mind-boggling crimes, witnessing people doing some of the most just obscene things that leave us oftentimes dumbfounded. And it's almost like a competition to see who can do the craziest shit sometimes. That is the perfect encapsulation of Aquarius when we talk about its dark-sided manifestation. And on an individual level, these are people who can really take that on and, as stated before, unapologetically show up and reveal some of the worst parts about humanity. When in alignment, Aquarius is supposed to bridge the gap between the higher level of consciousness and humanity, but when out of alignment, they can drag us straight to the pits of hell in a way that Scorpio could only laugh at. Now, when discussing psychopathy or psychopathic behavior, some of the main hallmarks are antisocial personalities and a lack of remorse for one's actions, a lack of remorse and an absence of empathy for others. All of these are hallmark characteristics of the dark-sided Aquarius. Aquarius can also be very egocentric because of its opposition to Leo. There is often lots of antisocial behavior or isolationist behavior, which is also very Aquarius. There is also a surplus of boldness and egotistical traits. Once again, also very much in alignment with dark-sided Aquarius. And so with that in mind, I want to bring out Exhibit A. Brandon Isabel from Memphis, Tennessee. Over the past week or so, he was actually taken into authorities after admitting to murdering his child's mother and then taking his 2-day-old newborn infant and yeeting her into the Mississippi River. You heard me right. He took a newborn baby and threw her into the river. Needless to say, both the mother and child are no more. The authorities have not been able to recover the child's body. At this point, I seriously doubt that they will. Now, picture here on the screen are the victims, Miss Danielle Hoyle and her newborn baby. And as the news kind of circulated, it was also revealed that she and Brandon were actually dating, but he had a girlfriend. Upon finding out that she was with child, he requested that she get an abortion. She didn't, obviously. And instead of doing what most of his male black counterparts would do and just walk away, he thought it would be a bright idea to savagely and viciously kill both mother and child. So let's go ahead and take a look into the natal chart of Mr. Brandon Isabel. Brandon was born February 1st, 1997 in Memphis, Tennessee. Ironically, this whole incident took place on his birthday. Him being born on the 1st actually has a lot to do with his relationship with children. A lot of people with one energy can have very karmic experiences with kids, be it their own kids, other people's kids. You can see people with one energy really aspire to be around kids. These are people who could dedicate like their life's purpose to teaching kids or having kids. But it could also have adverse effects in terms of experiencing lots of heartache and pain involving children, or there even potentially being tragic circumstances involving children, shocking circumstances involving children, especially with him being an Aquarius. And to fuel this and further reinforce this energy, he has his sun at the 13th degree of Aquarius conjoined to Uranus. The number 13 reinforces that Aquarian energy, and it could also point towards deviancy, death, right? And just sudden, shocking situations. Once again, further kind of pronouncing that Aquarian energy. And of course, the sun deals with your children. So right away, looking at his sun in conjunction to Uranus, it explained a lot, okay? Because it really amplified that Aquarian energy that could allow a person to be so cold towards a baby, so cold towards a child. I mean, it's likely that he never formed any type of connection with this child, even despite being present in the birthing room when Miss Danielle actually pushed the child out, right? It takes a special kind of hardened individual to watch your own child being born and then doing it bodily harm immediately thereafter. In fact, his sun is running contraparallel to the asteroid Nemesis, which, as its name suggests, can deal with one's enemies or where a person can place blame onto. So in other words, he looked at the child as a rival, an opponent, or he could have been the type to blame the child for his current situation. So my life would be going well had it not been for this damn baby, right? looking at the baby as the obstacle or the inconvenience, which, I mean, Aquarius is the sign of convenience. So given that it's in a situation where it feels inconvenienced, they'll do anything they can to bypass that or overcome that. Or in his mind, kind of defeat that. And will do so in a way that is completely unapologetic and where they can just completely lack any kind of morale, any kind of sensitivity. I mean, even some of the most hardened criminals would think twice before doing something to a baby, more so their own baby. And I would even argue post getting arrested after the fact, this still probably wouldn't have had a pronounced effect on him in terms of that apologetic kind of nature because of this Sun Uranus conjunction in Aquarius. He has a lot of Aquarian energy going on, and it definitely runs deep. I remember watching a video where he actually showed up in court and came face to face with Danielle's mother, and that was actually one of the things that she recollected about him. She said he was cold. She said he didn't even have any kind of remorse. He didn't come to me and apologize. He just looked at me. And that's very dark-sided Aquarius. I really doubt that he's sorry. And speaking to the situation that he was in, specifically the love triangle that appeared to be taking place, Pandora is opposing his Pluto in Sagittarius. And Pandora is an asteroid that deals with where we could release something harmful, where all hell could break loose. It could deal with secrets, curiosity, but it could also even deal with like unintended consequences or being caught off guard. And you could look at this, especially with Pandora and Gemini, as him living maybe even a double life, all right? And then when the threat of, the truth comes out, things take a drastic left turn. I also kind of looked at that as him telling on himself once he got into police custody, because he was the one who actually, not only confessed to the murder of his, baby mother, but also even, confessed to what he did with the baby, because up to that point, the child was just missing. And with this opposition, it was only a matter of time before his secrets were revealed anyway, in terms of dealing with multiple women at once. And the fact that his Pluto is conjoined to his moon could even suggest maybe the girl herself could have threatened him with going to the main chick or telling his girlfriend, or could have been somebody who may have been blowing up his spot, so to speak, which would have been another reason for him to feel like, okay, I have to get rid of her. Not justified, but this could definitely map out that thought process. Now, he has his Mercury and Venus conjoined to Neptune. His Mercury is at the 19th degree of Capricorn. His Venus is at the 28th degree of Capricorn. He actually has a Capricorn stellium consisting of Venus, Neptune, and Mercury, alongside his Aquarius stellium of his Sun, Uranus, and Jupiter. So, in all, this once again paints the picture of someone who is very cold, very even calculative, and who can really lack a soft spot for other people. In fact, with his Mercury and Venus in conjunction to that Neptune there, if anything, it can be more of an indicator of a person who maybe wants to seek an escape, or maybe not want to face the consequences of their actions. But unlucky for him, he also has his Jupiter conjoined to Uranus and Aquarius, which could deal with him being judged, put on trial for shocking behavior. Not to mention Capricorn in and of itself can denote being on the receiving end of karma, right? These are people who are oftentimes They have to be held accountable of their actions. He also has Venus in conjunction to Uranus, another aspect that can make him very indifferent and cold, especially even when it comes to his relationships. These are men who can be emotionally unavailable. They could have a long track record of objectifying women, betraying women. Venus in conjunction to Mercury, that also deals with him entertaining more than one woman at once simultaneously. I even get the vibe of maybe him dealing with best friends, dealing with girls who know one another, that type of treacherous bullshit. Venus in conjunction to Neptune, lacking boundaries with women, but also viewing women as toys or playthings that you can pick up and put down at your own discretion. Venus in conjunction to Neptune could also be indicative of secret affairs. His Venus is also squaring his Chiron in Scorpio, which absolutely points to him being a grade A cheater. Moreover, also having very dysfunctional relationships with women, and also gives him that kind of murderous tendency, right? That can make him absolutely capable of physically harming and or killing a partner, a woman, especially as a means of punishment. You have to keep in mind Capricorn is all about punishment. So when Venus is in Capricorn, the tendency to punish your partner is usually there. And a lot of times these people can just be very harsh with it, right? Very punitive. And because Venus is squaring Chiron and Scorpio, in his mind, her not getting that abortion was punishable by death. There's also this desire for control too, to control the women around you. Not to mention, I also thought it was interesting that Brandon himself is 25, but Danielle was either 27 or 28. This Capricorn stellium, namely Venus in Capricorn, also deals with him being drawn towards older women. So I thought that was interesting. And once again, with his Venus in conjunction to Mercury and Neptune, Danielle probably talked a lot. I also came across some social media posts that she made right before she was killed, and she oftentimes tagged him in a lot of things. And y'all know how social media works, especially if you're somebody who's already in a relationship. It's going to catch you up. You get caught up really quickly. So you can look at his Venus in conjunction to Mercury and Neptune as Danielle, maybe even like overstepping her boundaries, not really playing her role, quote unquote, either outing him on social media or talking too much, that kind of thing. His moon in conjunction to Pluto also gives him a lot of those abusive qualities and murderous tendencies, as does his Venus squaring Chiron and Scorpio. But once again, it could also even deal with him getting the abortions or dealing with women who may have gotten abortions. So there goes his suggestion that she terminate the pregnancy right there. His moon in conjunction to Pluto in Sagittarius could also make him very reckless, very irresponsible, especially if he just so happens to be a Sagittarius moon as well. Some other notable aspects that I feel could have contributed to him doing what he did, absolutely, once again, with that Uranus in conjunction to Jupiter, bringing about situations where he is being publicly judged for his actions. It also, moreover, suggests a person who can act in ways that are just like extreme, right? A person who is even prone towards overreacting to things in ways that can just be really bizarre. These are people who can also be very irrational. His Jupiter is squaring Chiron, which also corrupts his judgment system. It just points towards a person who just does not have good judgment. They could completely lack good judgment, or where it's just really corrupt. He is a Libra North Node with his Mars in conjunction to that North Node, opposing his South Node in Aries. And even his Saturn, okay, he has a Saturn at the third degree of Aries conjoined to his south node. Ultimately, he has a temper problem. These are people who can be very sadistic, very masochistic, but, once again, this theme of thriving off of controlling other people, being egotistical, and who just has a natural predisposition towards violence. It's also no wonder that he actually shot his baby mother in the head. A lot of Aries South nodes are gun happy. Aries also rules the head. So literally you could look at this Saturn in opposition to his Mars in Libra. Mind you, Libra deals with our partners, the opposite sex. You can look at that opposition as him ambushing her, catching her off guard, and literally sniping her in the head, gunning her down. But it also points to where, he is someone who is just accustomed to being very oppressive, very abusive, very aggressive. And this is just how he handles conflict. Now, obviously, in his lifetime, he is supposed to be someone who has to learn how to deal with women. And in this case, especially with his Mars and Libra in conjunction to his North Node, it led to him dealing with multiple women, but also learning healthy conflict resolution, right? Learning how to have sound judgment, better decision-making skills, weighing out the costs and benefits before you just do things impulsively, which he obviously failed. He failed the test horribly. And as a result, he has to deal with the byproducts of being entangled in the legal system. Very Libra North Node, very much Mars in conjunction to that Libra North Node. Saturn in Aries, especially when conjoined to the South Node, can indicate a just full out lack of control, lack of self-control. Now, in terms of his appearance, I thought it was really interesting to see that in his older photos that people put up online, he has a short haircut, like here, like so. But upon his arrest and upon this particular incident, he actually had locks. I think they were fake. But I said that to say that that's actually very Aquarius. Aquarius can deal with locks or even just eccentric hairstyles in general. It could also point towards having hair that may like defy gravity, so to speak. And he had like those wick looking kind of dreads to me, or that's what they kind of appeared to be. But in conclusion, that Saturn on his South Node definitely gave him this desire to see other people suffer, right? A lot of these people definitely, once again, can lack levels of empathy towards others, especially when they feel like they are deserving of it. These are people who kind of designate themselves to being the enforcer, right? I'm the enforcer of justice. I'm the enforcer of what needs to happen. And, as a result, he's paying the price because Saturn also rules karma. Now, hopping into Danielle's chart, I was able to obtain her information. And she was born on April 16th, 1994 in Memphis, Tennessee, what I assume. I could be wrong, but we're going to use Memphis because this is where this occurred. So if you guys would like to update that, feel free to do so in the comment section in terms of the place of birth. But the first thing I noticed was her being a birth number 16, which oftentimes is associated with catastrophe, tragedy. A lot of 16s can live very tragic lives. Now, this is not to say if you're watching this and you have 16 energy in your chart, if you are a birth number 16 yourself, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to suffer the same fate. But even if it's by way of other people, right? The people around you where tragic things and circumstances can befall them, or where they may have to make a lot of sacrifices, or where they can quite literally themselves be victims, especially to situations where they're befalling a fate that was kind of placed upon them by other people, the people that they're hanging around. The number 1 also deals with romance, love, matters of the heart, children. And the number 6 deals with partnership. Her love of love, her desire for companionship and partnership, maybe even her desire for a child, right? Allowing her to kind of get herself caught up with the wrong person. Now, she is an Aries sun, which I thought was really interesting. Her sun being in the same sign as Brandon's South Node obviously is a recipe for disaster. And Aries is actually one of the worst signs to have that Sun South Node kind of chemistry. Just because, yes, these are two people who can have a lot in common. It can feel very faded in terms of the bond, but they're going to clash. And when they clash, it could be big time. We're talking about abuse. We're talking about violence. And of course, it materialized into her literally getting gunned down, which is also the negative byproduct of Aries. A lot of Aries individuals, if they're not careful, can find themselves in situations where they are victims of stabbings, gunshot wounds, being burned. These are things that can all happen to a lot of Aries placements. She also has her Mercury at the 12th degree of Aries and her Mars in Aries. So once again, reinforcing his energy in her life. And she probably also had the tendency to attract very mean, selfish, once again, abusive men. And with her Cancer moon squaring Mars, a lot of this could be a byproduct of how she was raised. This is also a domestic violence aspect as well. And it could point to where she had, ways of her own, where she could have been very tough, or, someone who could have come off like that in terms of like abusive, and or just someone who was just accustomed to like having that kind of tough backbone, right? Now, unfortunately, her sun is forming a quincunx to Pluto, which can be deemed as a death aspect, especially as it pertains to one's child. So that could point towards the death of her child. Sun squaring Neptune, her child actually being taken, kidnapped. You could even look at this as being thrown in the river with that Neptune effect. Sun squaring Uranus, her being separated from her child. She also had a previous child beforehand. So, her being even separated from that child. It could also deal with her attracting men who are very cold and insensitive towards her. Men who are unavailable, especially by being in other relationships. And then with her Sun square Neptune, these are women who kind of have to be careful about the men that they attract to in terms of them being liars, cheaters, right? Dealing with men who may even opt to flake out when it comes to the lives of her and her children. And then that quincunx between her Sun and Pluto could also deal with her, untimely death at the hands of a man, being gunned down, being shot in the head. Once again, Aries rules the head. So, even the way in which she died was very karmic. Allegedly, she was gunned down outside of her vehicle. So her Mercury forming that sesqui square to Pluto also symbolizes that. And ultimately, Danielle was a Scorpio North Node with Pluto in conjunction to the North Node, Jupiter at the 11th degree of Scorpio. So unfortunately, she was someone, because technically this can be a placement for a person who may experience either an untimely death themselves, or who can oftentimes come very close and personal with death. They can also be placed under extreme circumstances. They can endure a lot of things in life just because of their natural tendency to attract psychopaths, abusers, manipulators. So once again, with her Pluto, given its conjunction to her North Node and its quincunx to her Sun, it puts her in the direct line of fire, especially when it comes to the men in her life. Attracting men like Brandon, who can go Looney Tune and off you for any given reason. So that was just really sad and unfortunate for her. And a lot of it actually really rooted or was rooted in her self-esteem. It's a Taurus South Node and her Venus at the 18th degree of Taurus. That number 18 is a very treacherous number too. That denotes a person having to kind of watch their back when it comes to the people around them, the people they're in relationship with. But, these people can oftentimes have self-esteem problems, issues with feeling valued. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. I just thought it was a really sad situation. Rest in peace to Danielle and that beautiful baby. Yeah, that's, I mean, really all I can say, y'all. This shit is crazy. So y'all jump down in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about this whole situation, and I will holler at y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.